In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.
So to Abuna's initial introduction, when he mentioned that this year he's gonna, that I should consider the topic is the bridegroom, he followed that by mentioning that the reference would be Hosea. In general, the worst marriage in history, period. Okay, so no change there. Okay, just saying that. Now, having said that, the theme of the bridegroom in general runs quite deep in the Old Testament. Who is God to his people, essentially? And in many ways, God is always described as king, or in many locations described as king. He's described as shepherd, okay? Certainly as a father, and in many occasions as bridegroom. Why bridegroom? Why is that important? Why is it relevant? Why should I even think about that? It's because the other images are not enough. They're very important in their own sakes. God as a father, as a shepherd, as a king are very important in their own sakes. But God as a bridegroom, the relationship of marriage, the bride and the bridegroom, is a very, very unique relationship. A king is usually imposed, okay? A father just happens, okay? I didn't pick my dad. He was a great guy, but I just, And a shepherd, that's a job. That's someone's job. A bride and a bridegroom, that's different. Okay, there is almost full humanity in free will, in selecting, in two people choosing to commit, to bind, any number of other things with that. And it's that depth, okay, that brings the theme of the bridegroom to life. There are lots of references, but Isaiah 54, for your Maker is your husband, the Lord Almighty is his name, the Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. In one verse, God links Maker, his role, husband, and Redeemer. In one verse, he puts the three all together. That's who he is. That's how he wants to communicate himself to his people. Okay? And he almost, in this particular verse, and in Ezekiel 16 and Jeremiah 2 as well, links the notion of the husband and the Redeemer. In Ezekiel 16, certainly it's an incredibly beautiful image. Okay, he says, I passed by you, and you were in your blood. I washed you. I'm translating on the fly, please do not quote. Okay, and he puts that image, the powerful image, that he does through this process of marrying Jerusalem. In Hosea, perhaps is the clearest image of God's restorative work, redemptive work in this marriage, right? The book in general starts by God asking Hosea, when the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, go marry a promiscuous woman and have children with her, for like an adulterous wife, this land is guilty of unfaithfulness to the Lord. So he married Gomer. It's one translation, but essentially in general, go marry an adulterous woman. No man wants to hear that. Okay? It's too much prophecy. Okay? She's going to be unfaithful to him, essentially. It's not just an insult or a description of her past. It's saying something about Gomer. To summarize what happens after he marries Gomer, they have 3 children. Suffice to say, the third child is named Lo-Ami, which translates as not my people, not mine. Some commentators took that as she already began to be unfaithful by the third child. Okay, it didn't take very long. Now, what follows is that as we progress through the first couple of chapters, by chapter 2, she has already moved on to a lover and then another lover. By the end of the chapter, she's essentially a streetwalker. Okay, things have gotten pretty bad. And by the beginning of chapter 3, which is really the focus of the talk tonight, it says God comes back again with a new command to Hosea, and he tells him, The Lord said to me, go show your love to your wife again. Okay. Though she is loved by another man, as in she's currently with another man, and is an adulteress, love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, though they turn to other gods and love the sacred raisin cakes. The raisin cakes were a delicacy served in idol feasts. God is not against dessert. So, I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and about a homer and a lethek of barley. Then I told her, you are to live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man, and I will behave the same way toward you. For the Israelites will live many days without king or prince, without sacrifice and sacred stones, without ephod or household gods. Afterward, the Israelites will return and seek the Lord their God. He has to buy her from a slave auction, essentially, just to kind of clarify the image. Okay? She is put up for sale. Usually that happens if she's put up for sale by her current lover, essentially, or if she's put up for sale because she fell in debt, and this was the only way to pay the debt, is she becomes a slave and she's sold for money. Prophet job can be very difficult. Okay? He has to marry this lady. He has to go buy her from a slave auction. He has to spend a fortune, by the way. I mean, from what we can tell, he paid full price of a slave for her. And some commentators say that the reason he used green is he didn't have enough money. Okay, so he had to split. It's a meditation, nothing more than that. And one of the questions that comes up when you read the story is, why would God ask Hosea to do that? Why would God allow that? Okay, and two reasons that, in general, yes, they explain the incident in the book, but they also speak to us about what God wants to do through this marriage with us, okay, with His church. In one reason, it was one way, Gomer is still His child. Gomer is still His. She's His people. She's part of His bride. And He still is trying to seek her, to go again, to restore her, to bring her to you. The theme of the book is not love conquers all. It's God conquers all. Okay? God's love. And the way to communicate that to her is, okay, let me send Hosea, marry her, and try to bring that salvation to her. As we go through this week, it reminded me of, I can't even count how many verses, but because of my basic knowledge, John 3:16, which everybody knows. For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish. Okay? That's what God actually did with us in the incarnation. He sent His perfect Son to us while I was still like Gomer. In 2 Corinthians 5:21, for our sake He made Him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in Him we might become the righteousness of God. That concept of someone good, in this case Hosea, nobody is really, except for Christ, be sent to save someone or to marry someone, to restore and to help, is not entirely foreign. The other reason, okay, why God would essentially engineer this marriage, okay, in such a way, is Hosea's job is a prophet. Hosea's job is to communicate God's intention, okay, to people, His message to people, and it's very difficult. He was essentially telling Hosea, it's very difficult for you to know my heart, to know the wound, to know what happens to me from the coldness, from the idol worshipping, from the waywardness, from the lip service of my people, until you've experienced that, until you've experienced the woman that you marry throwing herself into the arms of another man. It's a very deep wound. And one of the key reasons why the theme of bridegroom extends throughout the Old Testament, because God is trying to communicate that. A king gets angry if a citizen breaks the law. A father is grieved. A shepherd is like, a shepherd knows that sheep are dumb. Okay. He should. But a husband betrayed is a whole different ballgame. So what is God essentially calling us, or what does God want in this marriage? What is He inviting us to experience or to have? Finally, I made these guys' life difficult. There are three things that I could, that while preparing, I could see commentators coming up with. And one thing is that God is calling us for a marriage of priority. For a marriage to actually be successful, for a marriage to bear fruit, okay, it would be a priority in our lives. There is a verse in Jeremiah. Essentially, we can find through everything that Gomer did not do, okay, the things that God is looking for in a marriage. The first thing is that it is a priority. It should be a priority in our lives. A marriage taken for granted, a relationship of any kind actually, in fact, taken for granted, relegated to a back row somewhere, is unlikely to bear any fruit, okay, and is at risk of possibly failing altogether. A stable, a successful, a strong marriage, okay, can really allows each partner, when they're in it, to go into the world and face any sort of challenges, and they have better backing, just stronger to go into this and face the challenges that may come up upon them. Whereas a marriage that is rather weak, okay, even if everything else around is kind of stable, you go in and it's just your own life is out of balance. C.S. Lewis summarized it once when he said, when the first things are first, the seconds are seconds, and everything else is in order. But when the first things are somewhere down the line, everything else is in chaos. And when those first things are first, okay, the second things are not suppressed, but they increase. When everything takes its place, okay, everything prospers. When God is first, when the spousal relationship with God is first, everything increases with it. It's not dead. In Jeremiah 2, God speaks to His people and He says, "Can a virgin forget her ornaments, or a bride her attire? Yet my people have forgotten me days without number." When God says days without number, He's not exaggerating. Clearly not a priority for Jerusalem. But what else other than priority? Where does this fulfillment come from if it's not from marriage? Where is it coming from? The second point of what God is inviting us to have is a marriage of intimacy, known based on knowledge, based on expression. David sings it to him. In Psalm 139, he tells him, "You've searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I stand. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me." The reason all the other images, father, king, and so on, are not enough, they're important in their own sense, is that they don't go deep enough. At least I think I've successfully hid things from my father, okay. I can certainly hide things from authorities about who I am, my person, my inclinations. My boss, the shepherd, or somebody, certainly doesn't know me as well as my wife. My spouse, I can't hide anything. Or I can try. I failed so far. If anybody succeeded, please let me know. Okay. in general, I can pretend to my wife that I'm more kind. I can pretend that I'm patient. Okay? She knows. Okay? I can pretend that I'm generous or not. She knows. Because when it's time to be patient, if I'm irritable, then I'm not patient, clearly. When it's time to be generous, I'm not, and so on and so forth. What God is calling us for in this marriage is for a transparent, for this kind of relationship, for this very open, abandoned relationship to Him. Not based on, He didn't want the lip service of His people. He didn't want the pretentiousness of His people in the Old Testament. He wanted this abandoned, transparent relationship. That's what He wanted when He spoke about marriage. And that's what David is communicating back to him. The man who God attested, says is according to his own heart. It's that level of intimacy. It's that level of knowledge and closeness at the same time. And God knows already everything about me. It's not like I'm revealing anything new. I think the only thing that I'm asked to is to be in a relationship where these things are acknowledged before and where these things are there. One of the words that are used in Isaiah 54 when he says, "I redeemed you," when he speaks of redemption, the word that's used by St. Paul several times in Corinthians and Galatians, Greek word ex agorazo, and it literally translates to buying almost from a marketplace, not unsimilar to the image of Hosea. When they bought anybody from a marketplace, when they bought a slave from a marketplace, the slave was dressed very lightly, if any, so that the buyers can see what they're getting. Okay? And God buys us knowing what He's getting. He's not going to be surprised. He's looking for us. The third thing that God invites us to have is a relationship where our identity is changed, where we experience a change in our identity to Him. One of the cool things that's different between Eastern and Western marriages is the notion of the wife taking up the last name of the husband's family by addition or by substitution. But what's very strong about what God is inviting us to do in this case is He's inviting us to take on His identity. He's inviting us to take on His experience, how He sees the world, how He sees things, how He sees good. It's such a powerful affirmation. It's such a powerful idea. Okay? If my wife tells me that I am the most patient man that she knows, she's not going to say that, but okay. Or that I'm the most optimistic man that she knows. Okay. Even Abuna's laughing. See, Abuna's laughing at us. That just doesn't work. That would make me believe I am, optimistic. In fact, because she knows everything, right? She knows everything. Okay, and she's and she's ideally I'm her priority. So what she says, okay, is real, is true. Okay. So what happens if I know God on these two bases? If I know Him fully and if He's my priority, what He would say of me when He says you are redeemed, when He says you are clean, when He told His disciples you are clean because of the words I spoke to you. Okay? it changes how they even think of themselves. It changes their experience of how they see things. And it's that power of affirmation, that power that this is what God is inviting us to have in our spousal relationship with Him. When He was talking to Jerusalem in Jeremiah 2, He says, "Withhold your foot from being unshod and your throat from thirst. But you said, there is no hope. No, for I have loved," where it says aliens, not space creatures, alien gods, okay, foreign idols essentially. "And after them I will go." Essentially, it's almost hopeless addiction to something. What does it mean to follow another God? What does it mean to not have that? Where do I get my affirmation from? It's essentially, where do I get the affirmation? Where do I get the strength from? If it's not from God, where is it from? And wherever it is from, this is my idol. This is the God that I worship. If it's from my work, if it's from looks, if it's from politics, if it's from movements, if it's from somebody else, a person who became or who is the center of my life, whoever that is, okay, whoever gives the affirmation, whoever gives that kind of the fulfillment is the God that I worship. And the problem is, okay, and that's what God continues to tell them, okay, where are your gods that you've made for yourselves? Let them arise if they can save you in the time of your trouble, for according to the number of your cities are your gods, O Judah. But they don't save, they can't help. Somebody once said it to me. He said, the only thing money can do when you lose it is curse you, because that's what it does. It can't save you when you lose it. Finally, how is God actually saving this marriage? How is God working to restore us into this marriage, the marriage of where we have priority, where we have this knowledge and where we can look for Him for fulfillment and for change? We see it in when He talked to Hosea. Again, whatever He asked Hosea, He is essentially doing afterwards, right? So He said, "Love her as the Lord loves the Israelites. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and about a homer and lethek of barley. Then I told her, you are to live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or intimate with any man, and I will behave the same way toward you." Three things that God does to restore us, to bring us into this marriage. The first thing is go again. He keeps going. He came, He incarnated, He came, He sends messages, He sends disciples, prophecies, teachers, whatever you call it. He comes again and again and again. Okay. He paid the price. Hosea paid a significant price according to his means, and God paid the ultimate price. He went up on a cross. He paid it in humility, in just the incarnation humility. He paid that. He paid it in teaching again and again and again, and He paid it ultimately on the cross. And the last thing is that He paid it, or that He speaks to us. He tells us again and again, aside from paying a price, He tells us, I want to dwell with you. That's what He's essentially telling Homer. He takes his wife and He essentially tells her, I want to live with you. I want to make a life with you. I don't want short-term something. I don't want something here or there. I want to make a living. I want to live with you. Okay. And yes, there will be a period where we're going to need time for healing, for repentance, for going back. But I will be with you. In the end, I will be with you. The last conclusion I want to make is, if we're looking at an invitation from God to have Him as a priority, The only thing I can imagine is that him being perfect as he is, that we are his priority. And with David, the idea that we are a priority for God is unbelievable. We who are nothing are his priority. Because he put himself into this marriage with us. He is willing to let himself be known completely to us, like a spouse knows her husband. The offering that he's giving is such a privilege that it's unbelievable. I pray that God, at least for me, I genuinely pray that God allows me to experience that sort of intimacy with him. Glory be to God forever. Amen.